Hi, welcome to the NIRI 2019 annual conference here in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm joined by Cathy Conlon from Broadridge. Thanks so much for joining us, Cathy.
Glad to be here.
Absolutely. So Cathy, what are you seeing so far this proxy season in terms of new trends emerging?
Well, I'm not sure I'd call it a new trend. I think the ESG trend is very at the forefront right now. We're hearing a lot about it from our clients. I think the issue is that investors are expecting companies to have information for them. It's becoming much more a part of the investment landscape. It's certainly something companies are feeling they have to react to and provide information to their investors. So it's definitely a strong trend. I think everyone's seeing that generally now. I think from the perspective of something new that we're seeing beyond that is sort of vote no campaigns. So we've had quite a few companies reach out to us about looking for data and information about voting on certain directors where there was no real clear reason why a director there was a vote no campaign about a certain director. Usually you can tell if it's a comp committee issue or overboarding or something like that. So that's kind of an interesting, not sure if it's a trend so much as something that we're seeing with some of our clients, just sort of asking us for some help in that regard.
A bit of a kind of watch this space kind of theme, perhaps.
Yes, and in our next proxy pulse, I'm sure we will, if we do find a trend, we will certainly report more about it.
Sure, fantastic. Now, something you and I have talked a lot about in the past, especially at the Corporate Secretary ESG Integration Forum in December, was thinking about retail investor participation in proxy season. What are some tips that you can share with our audience about getting your retail investors more engaged?
Well, this is an important but challenging issue for companies. It's can be expensive to reach your individual investors. So I think the key thing that we help our clients with is to try to make the most impact of the things you're already doing, rather than trying to do a lot more. Because there's a lot of people you have to reach on the retail side. So we're doing a lot of mobile first work. We have a new proxy voting app that we're really pushing and encouraging mobile first because we think it's going to drive a lot of participation. In terms of the things that are already happening, what you're doing with your proxy, enhancing the printed version of the proxy, which many companies are doing, put a summary up front to make it easier to digest the information. An online proxy, a digital enhanced interactive proxy, that's a key way for your investors are looking at your information online. Make sure it's a really good format for them. Other things, just the packaging that's going out. I mean, this sounds so basic, but a lot of stuff still goes out in hard copy. And if the shareholder doesn't understand what it is or doesn't know to open it, that's obviously means that's kind of you want to allow them to have the opportunity to understand and know what it is. So clearly making it, showing, a voting message or something with your brand on it is something companies, I think, can do. We've done a bunch of work in social media this year where we're using Facebook and other social media tools to drive messaging out to shareholders during the solicitation period. And the last thing we're working on now is, SMS, text messaging. There's some problems in the way, the FCC and some other things that make it challenging for companies or Broadridge to help companies use text messaging. So it's sort of a nascent effort on our part right now. But I think as we see things like there's a new House bill that'll offer some safe harbor for using text messaging, assuming that comes to pass. Hopefully that's something in the future we can really leverage because, everyone's on their phones and sees those messages. So.
Well, that's right. And I mean, everyone's also on social media. How have you found the traction on social media? Because we hear really kind of mixed things from the IR community in particular about adopting social media, how much time to put into it. So what kind of return on investment of time are you seeing?
The return is actually pretty strong. We're doing it for purposes of proxy and voting, right? So the return that we're seeing in that specific time has actually been very strong. The click-through, so someone reacting to the message that's being posted and then clicking through, that's been pretty strong. What we haven't seen a lot of is adoption of social media by individual companies. I think there is still this question of, should I be doing this? What's the best way to do it? So we don't have a tremendous amount of companies doing it. We've had some strong results for the companies we work with, but I think we're really at the very initial stages of this, so I think there's a lot more to come.
And I also just wanted to go back to the digital proxy statement point you were making. It was really interesting at the Corporate Governance Awards last year. It was the first year that every proxy statement that was on the shortlist had a digital proxy, and it's really interesting, I think, to see the strides that are being taken with director interviews, video interviews, things like that, to kind of bring the proxy to life a little.
You do. Obviously, it's so much easier to consume information if you don't have to read a lot of legalese. A video is great. Just bringing the messages to the forefront. having a table of directors so you can see the gender or skill set. I mean, that's just so much more interesting to look at. The information is so much easier for shareholders to digest. And remember, the audience that we're trying to get to, I mean, the institutional investors are obviously, they need the information as well.
Yeah.
But the retail investor, that they're not professional investors. It's much harder for them to read and digest a standard proxy statement and all the legalese around it. So anything we can do to help them in that regard, I think is, well done. And for a very small incremental cost to put a better digital experience, I mean, to me, it's a bit of a no-brainer for companies.
Yeah, it's remarkable to compare a proxy statement from 10 years ago to now.
Yes,
well.
Exactly.
Well, anyway, thank you so much for joining us, Cathy. I hope you have a wonderful NIRI conference.
You do as well.
Thank you. Cheers.